With episodes rapidly coming to a close and Rite of the Nine being this Tuesday, it felt like the perfect time to share 3 builds that you should bring with you into Rite of the Nine. These builds I have been using throughout Heresy, and some of these builds I have covered before, mainly the Titan build, but that is just because they are that good. In this build, we'll be covering all 3 classes, including the one that I just mentioned, with each being a vital role going into the unknown of Rite of the Nine. Now enough talking, and let's get started with the first build. Starting us off, we have the Hunters. Now I can't lie, I never thought I would see use out of this exotic that we are using for this build, but with it, you will be flying around while having some insane amounts of damage resistance, while jolting everyone around you in an instant. We will be using the Hunter chess piece Gifted Conviction, which reads, activating Ascension or Tempest Strike throws bouncing explosives at nearby targets that jolt and damage them. Jolting nearby targets grants you damage resistance. With this exotic, applying Jolt to targets within 15 meters grants you a damage resistance buff for 10 seconds, stacking up to 3 times, with an increasing resistance percentage. For 2 times, you get 25% damage resistance, for 3 times you get 40, and for 4 times you get 50. This exotic alongside our weapons and fragments will synergize perfectly. In this build, we are going to be using the base arc subclass. I wouldn't recommend using the prismatic subclass only because of the synergy with the artifact mods being focused on arc abilities and weapons. For the super, use what you like, but I'm using Gathering Storm, but realistically it's entirely situational depending on what activity you're running. For the abilities, use Combination Blow for the melee to get your ability refilled after a melee final blow. Then, for the grenade, use what you like, but I prefer pulse grenades. Now, let's talk about the aspects and the fragments. With the aspects, you are going to want to use Ascension, which reads, use Air Move while airborne to consume your class ability energy to summon your arc staff, propelling yourself upwards and creating a burst of energy around you that amplifies allies and jolts nearby targets. And for the second aspect you're going to want to use is Tempest Strike, which reads, while sliding, activate your charge melee ability to unleash a devastating uppercut attack that travels along the ground in front of you, damaging and jolting targets it hits. Defeating jolted targets grants a stack of Bolt Charge. Both of these activate the perk for Gifted Conviction, allowing for some insane amounts of jolt and damage resistance. Now for the fragments, starting off we are going to want to use Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target or target with Bolt Charge creates an ionic trace. Following this, we're going to want to use Spark of Discharge. Arc weapon final blows have a chance to create an ionic trace. For the next one, we have Spark of Shock. Arc grenades jolts targets. And then for the second to last fragment, we are going to want to use Spark of Instinct. While critically wounded, taking damage emits a burst of damaging arc energy that jolts targets. And lastly, for our final fragment, we're going to want to use Spark of Focus. After sprinting for a short time, class ability regeneration is increased. Now with all of the aspects and fragments out of the way, let's talk about our weapons of choice. Now I can't lie, most of these weapons in these builds are all going to be fairly similar. When I was testing this build, the only thing that I really enjoy using is the Stasis Rocket Assisted Sidearm, Tenacious Mastery. Only because of its dominating factor of stunning champions, it's the only choice within this episode. For our energy weapon, honestly, anything that applies Jolt is perfect, but again, I always use VS Pyroelectric Propellant. You do also have the option of using Ikelos SMG, Path of Least Resistance, or Delicate Tomb. And then for heavy, it's a no-brainer here. Queensbreaker for the heavy boss damage that you can inflict. If you don't have Queensbreaker and the Catalyst, what I'd recommend using is Thunderlord. It has the best chance of generating high bolt charge, and not to mention, it's just one of the best things for DPS. For this build, make sure you are using tier 10 mobility and tier 10 resilience. You could also go into a little bit of recov for that health, but I'd still recommend mainly the mobility and the resilience because you're going to have high amounts of damage resistance, making you practically invincible. On the artifact, make sure you have on Overclock and Low to have faster reloads with your weapon while amplified, Dielectric to grant Bolt Charge when we kill a arc debuff target. If you do end up using Queensbreaker, make sure you throw on Particle Reconstruction so you can get that little bit of damage during any DPS phases you might encounter. And then also, if you do end up using Tenacious, make sure you throw on Defibrillating Blast to get max stacks of Bolt Charge from stunning a champ, while also triggering an Arc Bolt to heal you and jolt nearby targets. And now lastly, for our armor mods, on the helmet throw in a Dynamo and 2 Harmonic Siphons to get our class ability faster and to drop Orbs of Power. On the arms throw in Bolstering Detonation focusing strike, and momentum transfer. On the chest, throw on a charged up, arc reserves, and a harmonic resistance. We want this to add a little bit more damage resistance, and not to mention, it gives us an increased amount of armor charges. On the legs, throw on a insulation, recuperation, and better already. We need something to allow us to heal in this build and give us a little bit more class ability regen. And lastly, on the class item, throw on a utility kickstart, Reaper, and powerful attraction. With these, if we don't have a way to reobtain our class ability, we have utility kickstart. With Reaper and powerful attraction, it will also allow us to collect orbs and create orbs just from using our class ability, which we will be doing a lot of this. Now just hold on a second. Before we get into the second build, I just want to let you guys know that I have started a community Discord server. So if you are interested in joining, the link will be in the description. We have Destiny 2 players over there alongside Marathon players. So if you're trying to get a team of runners together or maybe even a group of raids, come on over, we'll have you sorted. Now let's get back to the builds. Alright, that is it for the Hunter build. Now, let's swap over to my favorite build of all time, which is the insurmountable Skullfort Titan build. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, Jxhnzon, didn't you just cover this build only a few weeks ago? Yes, I did. I wouldn't be able to forgive myself if I didn't put this into the list. If you haven't seen the full breakdown of this build, I would highly recommend go do it. I will leave the build video down in the description if you want to go check it out. Now with all of that out of the way, let's get into the build. For our subclass, we're going to want to use the main arc subclass, only because we want to use it for its one aspect. I think you already know what it is. But for the super, make sure you throw on Thunder Crash to get that extra boss damage, and a quick escape if need be. For the abilities, make sure you are using Rally Barricade and Thunderclap for the melee. For grenade, use what you like, but pulse grenade still is top tier in my opinion. For our aspects, make sure you throw on the obvious Storm's Keep. Cast your class ability to grant a moderate amount of bolt charge stacks to you and nearby allies. While behind your barricade, you and allies gain stacks of bolt charge over time, and your weapon can discharge max stacks of bolt charge. This aspect not only has been dominating endgame activities, but has been a clear choice in all aspects of the game. Now, for the other aspect, do yourself a favor, throw on Knockout. Critically wounding a target or breaking their shield infuses your melee attacks with arc energy and increases your melee range and damage for a short duration. Defeating targets with melee attacks makes you amplified and restores a portion of your health. Defeating more powerful combatants increases the amount of health restored. Now for the fragments, use Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target or defeating a target with bolt charge creates an ionic trace. Following this, throw on Spark of Resistance. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. Just this fragment alone gives you 40% damage resistance just from being surrounded by enemies, which you will be surrounded a lot with this build. After this, make sure you throw on Spark of Shock. Arc Grenades jolts targets. This will allow us to finally be able to feed into Spark of Ions, and not only that, make sure you throw on Spark of Discharge. Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an Ionic Trace. Creating an Ionic Trace grants a stack of bolt charge. Now with all the fragments out of the way, I'd like to swing into what weapons we are going to be using for this build. For our kinetic slot, just like what I said with the Hunter build, we are going to be using Tenacious Mastery. It is by far the best weapon that you can possibly use in the game right now for PvE and game activities. For our energy slot, use anything that can recharge your class ability or super in a short duration. My choice for this season will always be the VS Pyro Electric Propellant. If you don't have this weapon, use the Ikelos SMG with Volt Shot and Shoot to Loot, or Noxious Vetiver with Pugilist and Jolting Feedback. And then lastly, for our heavy slot, again, the best DPS outputter, without a doubt, Queensbreaker. With this weapon, again, you can do a massive amount of damage with its 3 burst firing mode. For our stats, try to have the maximum resilience that you can, and on top of that, try to have max strength, just so we can have high uptimes on both our melees and barricades. If you wanted to, you could throw a little bit into intellect or discipline, but again, it's entirely optional if you want to do so. For the artifact mod, make sure you have on Overclock and Load, dielectric, particle reconstruction, and defibrillating blast just to get those added benefits. Now lastly, let's go over the armor mods. Now starting off on the helmet, you're going to want to use a harmonic siphon, powerful friends, and heavy ammo finder. You could also swap out the heavy ammo finder for hands-on if you would like to get super energy from melee kills. On the arms, throw on a heavy-handed, impact induction, and momentum transfer. For the chest, run 2 resistance mods for added protection from enemies. On the legs, throw on 2 arc surges and an elemental charge mod. And then on the class item, make sure you are using 2 outreach mods and a reaper to get a orb of power with a final blow after using your class ability. Now lastly, for the final build of this video, and a build that actually surprised me with the ability to devastate groups of adds, the Arc Fallen Sunstar build. Now I can't lie that the Warlock is my least played character, but this build did make me play on it just a little bit more frequently than I usually do. This build combines the best ability spam and damage output on targets. Like I said previously, we are going to be taking advantage of the Fallen Sunstar exotic helmet, which reads, "Ionic traces you create move faster and grant you additional ability energy. Nearby allies also gain ability energy when you collect Ionic trace. When you combine this with ways to boost your ability regen, it will make for a pretty awesome build." Now let's hop in. Starting off with the subclass, make sure you are using the base Arc subclass. Now for the super, make sure you are using Chaos Reach to get that extra boss damage in. Plus, it jolts targets that are hit by the super. For the abilities, throw in what you like for the class ability. For the melee, use Chain Lightning, and for the grenade, use Pulse Grenade. Any of these can be changed, just personally, I enjoyed these just a little bit more. Now for the fragments and the aspects, do yourself a favor and throw on Electrostatic Mind, which reads, defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an Ionic trace. Creating an Ionic trace makes you amplified. And for the other, make sure you are using the brand new Ionic Sentry aspect, which reads, defeating targets with kinetic or arc weapons or abilities charge up an arc turret that periodically chains lightning together, granting a stack of bolt charge with each hit. Throw your grenade to deploy an Ionic Sentry, blinding nearby targets on initial impact. Mix both of these aspects together and you will have yourself a little turret with you while you continue to jolt targets. Now for the fragments, use Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target or defeating a target with bolt charge creates an Ionic trace. Next, throw on Spark of Instinct. While critically wounded, taking damage emits a burst of damaging arc energy that jolts nearby targets. For the next one, Spark of Shock. Arc Grenades jolts targets. And then for our final fragment, throw on Spark of Discharge. Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an Ionic trace. Collecting an Ionic trace grants a stack of bolt charge. Now you might be asking, what type of weapon should I bring along? To make things simple, the weapons I said in the previous builds I'd recommend, but again, use anything that will apply jolt or grant Ionic traces. Delicate Tomb is a really good one, and Cold Heart is also a fairly decent one as well. For the stats, try to have at least tier 10 recovery for high uptimes on our class ability. For resilience, try to have at least tier 7 to tier 8 for that damage resistance, and either have high discipline or high strength for those uptimes on our melee or our grenade, but both of those are entirely optional. For the artifact mods, essentially, like I said before, overclock and load, dielectric, particle reconstruction if you end up using a linear, and defibrillating blast with anything that has champs in it. Now, let's move over to the armor mods. On our helmet, make sure you have a harmonic siphon, kinetic siphon, and a hands-on. On the arms, throw on a heavy-handed, impact induction, and focusing strike. On our chest, throw on resistance mods for the added 25% damage resistance. On the legs, throw on recuperation, better already, and elemental charge. And now lastly, on our class item, throw on outreach, bomber, and a reaper. With these builds, you'll find it extremely easy to defeat massive groups of enemies or knock out any boss encounter for both dungeons, raids, or even Rite of the 9. Now I know that we have Rite of the 9 this Tuesday, but if you do have some time to flesh out some of these builds, I would highly recommend it. If you found this video helpful, or if you want to see some more builds in the future, do yourself a favor and smash both the like and subscribe button. You can always unsub later if you like. If you want more content like this, head on over to my TikTok where we have shorter versions of these builds. Not to mention, I also stream over on Twitch when I can. Thank you guys for staying until the end of the video. My name is Jxhnzon, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.